Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and today we've got one of my favorite people in the world in the house, Rick Pollitt.
Hi, Greg. Great to see you.
Rick, now someone told me that you used to be pretty important here in Wycomico County. What did you do here?
Well, I always introduce myself as the hired help.
The hired help.
Yeah. No, I had the honor of being Wycomico County's first elected county executive.
And
served 2 terms. I think we did pretty well, and then they found out I was a Democrat, and
and suddenly became a
I
sin
went the other way.
to be a Democrat.
Yeah, yeah.
And now you are?
I'm the Crisfield City Manager, which is a great fit for me. I got my start in Somerset County almost right out of college as Planning and Zoning Director for the county. And so there are a lot of people in Crisfield that I used to work with that I still remember. And I was very fortunate that the mayor of Crisfield, Kim Lawson, really appreciated what we try to do in Wycomico County with the whole building community theme, and thought that if we could bring that kind of focus to Crisfield, it would be good for the community there. So I couldn't have asked for a better reception. The people in Crisfield have been wonderful.
And you were the longtime Fruitland city manager.
I was there for 22 years,
Right.
yes.
So being a city manager is really your forte.
Well, you know, when I was running for office, people called me a career politician. I never saw myself as that. I always looked at myself as someone who genuinely wanted to work for the public to help improve our community. I wasn't a good politician. I could come out and campaign for you and make you seem like the best choice for any job in the world.
Right.
But to go out and toot my own horn and to try to promote myself was never really part of who I was. And so I wasn't really good at that. But I do love the opportunity to serve and to help my community. And fortunately, there's some that still think I can do that.
Now, you were forever from Eden, Allen area.
Yes.
Still live in Allen?
I live in Allen, in the house I grew up in.
Yeah.
Families had the property off and on for about 200 years now.
Yeah.
So I'm the 9th generation in Allen.
Isn't that amazing?
I love it. I love it. I just can't imagine being anywhere else.
I was down there the other week, and there's a sign there for the community, and it was someone's birthday, and they had happy birthday to whoever it was in the community. I was just like, that's just the nicest thing, that the community's like that.
That sign was my son's Eagle Scout project.
Okay.
You know, we used to talk about so many things going on in that sleepy little village of Allen. It was hard to keep up with it all. So when Ricky was looking for an Eagle Scout project, he thought, well, how about a sign where we can promote all the community activities? And in the downtime, we put up birthdays and anniversaries, and kids will go down and have their pictures taken in front of the sign with their name on it.
Yeah.
So it's a nice touch.
It's just so cool.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. So people tell me all the time with the show, they want to know more about what's going on in the other counties. So we've had some Worcester people on, and Crisfield is a town that everyone feels like they've got a connection to. Like we all feel like we own a piece of Crisfield because it's just such a cool little place. But one thing I keep hearing is that Crisfield still hasn't recovered from the storm.
We haven't. Crisfield has suffered through 2 pretty major disasters in quick succession. One was the economy. I mean, the Great Recession that hurt all of us was particularly devastating to Crisfield, and you don't hear the word recovery used very much there in the sense of the economy. And then, of course, Hurricane Sandy came through, and that was just totally devastating.
Right.
Fortunately, there's been millions of dollars of aid brought in to help people elevate their houses, to rebuild houses that suffered damage, but we're still a long way from being back where we ought to be.
Right. And most of us think of Crisfield as the main drag, but there's a lot of Crisfield that you don't see.
There is a lot of Crisfield you don't see, and one of the things we're trying to do, because if you only come to Crisfield for the Taw's Crab and Clam Bake in July or the Crab Derby at Labor Day, you might think of Crisfield as that nice little town all the way at the end of the road.
Right.
We have to change the public perception of that dead-end road and start looking at it as a gateway to the Chesapeake. Because literally you can drive right off the state road coming into town and you'll be overboard.
Right.
But you've got Smith Island, Tangier Island, the whole bay experience in front of you there. We've got world-class state-owned Summers Cove Marina.
It's amazing.
For the boating community.
Yeah.
We've got Janes Island State Park, which is a premier kayaking and camping facility known up and down the East Coast. So there's so much potential there. There's so much we can promote to bring people into town to enjoy the bay and all of the things moving out from Chrisfield.
Right.
We've just got to work on getting that mindset and letting people know what we do have to offer.
And it's a place that's very susceptible in terms of the economy with seafood and everything else, but there's definitely high unemployment in Somerset County in general.
Yes.
But it just seems more economically susceptible than most of the other communities.
Well, there's certainly a lot of potential. We have property, we have buildings that are available for prospective business. The old Carville Hall Cutlery Factory,
Right.
The city owns, and we've been trying to get people to come and take a look at that as a good place to bring in some jobs and to add to the economy. We're in the process of building a wind turbine
Right.
by our wastewater treatment plant that hopefully will save us many thousands of dollars in energy costs, and maybe serve as a model for the potential wind energy on the lower shore.
Right.
And so, as I say, there are a lot of possibilities in town.
That's cool. Yeah. And the people there seem to have really accepted you as the guy.
As I say, I couldn't have asked for a warmer welcome. They've
Yeah.
just been terrific, and feel very much at home.
There's been a little controversy lately about the community housing that's downtown, and maybe that should be moved. Is that a real issue, or is that?
Well, I think it is. It's the Chrisfield Housing Authority, which, much like the Wycomico Housing Authority, has nothing to do with the city of Chrisfield.
Right,
It's a HUD-financed
Right.
and HUD-managed
It's a federal
facility.
thing, yeah.
It's all federal. The mayor does appoint members to the housing board. Aside from that, we really have no direct relationship with them. The issue is they're right square in the flood zone.
Right.
And so, as a federal property, when they have to spend federal money to repair flood damage, hurricane damage, that sort of thing, there's a sense that they could do better if they looked into relocating. So the county commissioners have actually appointed a study committee to look into the feasibility of relocating the Chrisfield Housing Authority away from the Summers Cove area, out of the floodplain, and just what other possibilities there might be.
Right.
So I think it's a legitimate exercise. I'm not sure how it will actually play out. There's going to be a ton of practical challenges involved with it, but it's definitely underway.
In the late 70s, early 80s, when that was placed there, the idea was to put the housing closer to jobs.
Yes.
So a lot of those jobs are gone now.
A lot of the jobs are gone. We've got a brand new library that's due to open very, very soon that is going to give us more opportunities, more windows on the world, so to speak, for people to come in and,
Right.
and apply for jobs, get training over the internet and that sort of thing. And that is still centrally located where people in the housing authority areas could walk to the library and have access to those services. But again, we're hoping that the result of the study doesn't indicate they should move out of town,
Right.
but there might be high ground someplace where we could accommodate them. And actually, I'd like to see them assimilated more into the wider community. You know, you put folks of a certain economic level off to one side like
Right.
that, and then it develops a stigma, and
Right.
they say, "Oh, you're in the projects," type of thing.
Right.
It shouldn't be that way. You should be able to go down the street and have people in privately owned homes and people who are renting homes,
Right.
and people that are getting assistance for their homes,
So there's
and
some
not know which one's
inclusion.
which, so
Right.
that we are part of one community.
Right.
So I hope that'll be a part of the study as well.
Now, I could never work in Chrisfield because my favorite thing to eat is a crab cake sandwich, and there's just too many of them readily available in that town.
Oh, it's great. I'm trying hard to be careful about that, but we have that, and one of our newest projects is the relocation of the Smith Island Baking Company.
That's a double negative there. It's just like that's wrong.
Well, it's ironic though, because you today can't drive into Chrisfield and buy a Smith Island cake unless you go to a restaurant and buy one of theirs that they have for dessert.
Right.
But the Smith Island Baking Company produces their cakes and they ship them out. Well,
Right.
now they're going to relocate to a former IGA store, and they're going to have a big display window in the front where people can come in and watch the assembly of the cakes and buy cakes on site. So I've promised my wife she'll have a cake a week.
Do you have enough self-control? Will you have to go to the gym in the morning
Absolutely
and at night?
not.
Or
No, I'll be one of their best customers, I'm sure.
now, I don't know how to bring this up, but do you watch what goes on in Wycomico?
Not very much.
No?
Unfortunately, even when I was working in the county, I couldn't watch PAC 14 because our signal in Allen comes from Somerset County,
Right.
so we don't get PAC 14. I of course love your newspaper. I get that
Thank you.
when Tracy brings me a copy home from the bank. But and of course we read the other paper, but I don't pay a lot of attention to it. I'm more focused on Chrisfield now.
Do you identify with what your successor's going through? Do you
Oh, you can't
kind of
help but
commiserate for him a little bit, or
sometimes I think, what in the world what in the world are you doing and why?
right?
But that's natural.
Right.
That's natural. I try not to publicly be critical because you don't, those of us who are not directly engaged really don't know all of the other nuances and things that are in the air that go into a decision.
Right.
And unless you're there, you're really not qualified to judge somebody else.
But when you think about it, you're the only other man in the world who knows what his life is like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you know the
Yeah.
stuff that's on his desk and what he's having to deal with every day.
Sure. Yeah. And it is a challenge. Now, fortunately, he is there at a time when recovery does seem to be an active word, at least in Wycomico County.
Yeah.
And I think he'll have more opportunities to expand and develop than we did. We were pretty much charged with keeping the ship afloat during really bad
Right.
times. And I have to say, I think we did a really good job of that. You and I talked a number of times about the bond rating upgrades that we were able to achieve.
I mean, how you were able to
even in the
carry
worst
that
of the
on.
recession.
Yeah.
Well, it was through very careful management of our finances.
Yeah.
But it was more of a hunker down and ride it out than it was being able to really plan good things. So we did plan them,
Right.
but the implementation had to wait. So he does have the opportunity now, I think, to actually do some good work.
I did kind of not smirk, smile, laugh. It sounds really cynical. But I remember you used to announce the bond ratings, and I
Yes.
would ask him about that. Like, Rick's doing a great job with the bond ratings, and he'd be like, yeah, whatever. Well, this year he did equally as well with the bond ratings, and he tried to trumpet that. And other people were like, yeah, whatever. But he finally understood how important it was.
Sure.
And you always did, and other people didn't get it. And you could tell that other people weren't getting it with him either. But
Yeah.
he wanted to trumpet that, like he understands. I think he probably has more sympathy for you now than he did before.
Well, I hope he has a better understanding of the challenges we faced. And as far as the bond ratings go, the most I'll say, and I say this, with a glint in my eye, he didn't screw it up.
Right.
The words that they used in his report were
Right.
the words they gave to us when they upgraded us. And so he didn't take it down any. He maintained the level of confidence that we had built on Wall Street. And that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah. I used to tell people, Rick steered us through this incredible storm. I mean, it was amazing how bad things were, and just 6 years of really negative economic news and trouble and cuts, and just what you were able to do to preserve that. And I always admired that you were able to sail through the storm, but then other people would say, yeah, but since the guy's been on the ship, it's just been raining the whole time. We want a guy who's going to make the sun shine. Well, it doesn't work that way.
If you can figure that one out, you could make $1 million.
Right. So now it seems more sunny, and there's more possibility. We're still not out of the woods, though, in terms of the economy yet.
We're not. And I respect some of the things that they're trying to do to jumpstart the economy. I know the conflict over the required sprinklers in
Right.
homes and the cost that adds. The whole issue of the impact fees. I understand what they're trying to do to give it a little jolt, and I hope they're successful.
Right. And even like last night, the anti-poultry farm people were back out. So every council meeting they have, the public comments part is completely overwhelmed by that issue.
Well, I'm very anxious to see how that works, especially from a state perspective, because
Yeah.
I'm convinced that one of the things that hurt us was the intense overregulation that came through the last administration, especially on the poultry front.
Right.
And we did our best to try to work with them in a sense that we could try to get as much as we could out of it and try to stave off the worst of the impacts that were coming our way. But I think we were so closely associated with the governor in that program that a lot of the folks locally lost confidence that we were doing what we could. Now they've got their governor, now they've got their administration, and it seems like the issues are still the same. So I'm very anxious to see how that works, how that plays out.
Right. County executive form of government. People are telling me that maybe we don't need a county executive after all, that was an overreaction to some trouble there in the 2000s. Do we need a county executive in Wycomico County?
It's funny you should say that. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but when it first came up as a public issue, I was against it.
Yeah.
In fact, I voted against it in the referendum because I didn't think we did. I thought it was an overreaction. I grew up here as you did, and I've seen the county councils that we've had from the past, the Henry Parkers, going back to Albert Bailey and Frank Colburn, and the ones that came through. The county council in one particular period went through a time where they gave in to their natural inclination about taxes and put off doing anything until they felt they were boxed into a corner.
Right.
And they tried to overcompensate all at one time, and there was a rebellion.
Right.
And so we ended up not only with the county executive form of government, but the revenue cap and other things that really changed our political system. I'm not so sure all that was necessary. I think if we had the right county council in place, you might not have needed that. However, since we did decide to go with the county executive, it was my feeling that the first one should really be one who was there for the right reason. It wasn't
Right.
about power and ambition. It was about how can I maybe bring the community together and kind of get all of us engaged again in trying to form a responsible approach to our challenges. And so I wanted to make the office live up to its potential, even though I thought we didn't necessarily have to have it in the first place.
Right. I felt like you ran it like a Ted Shea or a Matt Kramer would have been if they had been elevated, that you were still an administrator guy. You weren't a politician guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, that was one of my challenges because
Right.
I think in establishing the credibility of the office, I had to get over the fact that I wasn't Matt Kramer being elected. I really was charged with developing a vision, trying to reach out and bring community engagement to the table and get
Right.
all of us working together toward a common goal. And that's above and beyond what an administrator does. But there was that, and there was going out and teaming with the state and federal agencies to see how we could all work together to improve our lot. And so there was a lot more to the concept of a county executive than just the administrator. But because I was the first, a lot of people didn't get that. And so that was a constant struggle to remind them that, and I'll say this, and I think the world over, but the first time we had a blizzard, a real snow emergency, as part of my job, I declared a snow emergency because that
Right.
kicked in certain things.
Right. Some
Well,
state and federal funding, yeah.
One of the county council members in a very late night email to all of her associates, and it wasn't Stevie Prettyman, said, "Who gave Rick Pollitt the right to declare an emergency?" So, there was a big learning curve.
Right. Absolutely. You see the current county executive, and I'll get off of this in a minute. The current county executive, Mr. Culver, perhaps going beyond his boundaries. But in his mind, he doesn't have any boundaries. He leads the whole county, but you used to sort of know your place. So he'll opine on the school board, and with the school board, no one asked him about things. How awkward is that?
Well, you're right in that there is an expectation that the county executive is going to be involved in any facet of community development. And certainly when more than half of your budget goes toward education, you really have to have a link with the school board. I came to the office with that link because I had spent 9 years
You've
as
been a school board member
of the Board of Education.
Yeah.
And I respected their system, I respected the people that were there, and I knew they were careful with their budgets. You always had a lot of public talk about they're wasting this and they're messing up with that, but that wasn't the case. I've never seen an agency more audited and more held to account than the Board of Education. And what a lot of people don't understand is there are so many mandates over which we had no control,
Right.
coming down from federal and state government, that I've always had a great deal of respect for our Board of Education and the system that they've run. And so consequently, I didn't feel the need to be hovering over them all the time saying, well, why are you doing that and what about that?
Right.
I had a better understanding than that.
And it's been interesting to see John Palmer and Joe Ollinger, who have been appointed to the school board, both pretty critical of past school operations.
Yes.
And now you don't hear any of the criticism anymore. It's like they've either found religion or they understand what's going on.
I hope they've seen the other side.
Yeah.
We used to have a council president in Fruitland who would, by habit, take some of the more vocal naysayers in town and put them on a committee.
Right.
And thinking that let them see the other side, see how things work. And invariably, they became stronger citizens and active promoters of the city rather than a constant critic. So it's a good thing to happen sometimes to get the ones in there that might need a little education.
Now, you were the first person I thought of when the county executive announced the idea for free tuition to Warwick. And the reason I thought about it, because if you had proposed that, they would have gone and burned down the government office building.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's kind of like Nixon going to China. Only Nixon could go to China. Only he could recommend the free tuition thing. And I think it's the greatest idea ever. But I can hear some of the county council members starting to think that this is a bad idea, or starting to let out that they're opposed to it.
Yeah.
Had you ever thought of something like that, or?
Well, we didn't have the luxury of thinking like that.
You didn't have the money.
Again, we were trying not to cut Warwick, much less increase their enrollment without the revenue. And so I think as an economic development tool, it's a good strategy. It's a good idea to at least be able to reach out to folks who can use retraining. so that they can adapt to a newer world and new employment opportunities. As I say, we didn't have the opportunity to do that sort of thing when I was in office, but I would support that.
Right. You're a community guy, and like me, you seem to understand how important community is. You could have gone and lived anywhere, but you stayed here in the house that you were basically born in. Your father was a great circuit court judge here, Judge Pollitt, knew everyone. He was the kind of guy that even when he was sentencing you to jail, you appreciated that he was thinking about what should happen for you to get your life straight. He had that ability. And just a physically imposing man. I remember, I can only imagine growing up with Judge Pollitt as your dad.
Oh, it was wonderful. I miss him terribly. Yeah.
And being in a small community where everyone knew your business, they were all watching you.
Well,
all
we
the
were all
time.
related when I was growing up.
That's true. If you go to the church there in Allen, there's a lot of Pollitts in that graveyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a kid, my dad used to tell me there was about 90% of the folks on that side of the street were family.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore.
Right.
But that's where we are.
So what is it about community that other people don't, so many people in America just sort of isolate themselves in their homes and they don't know what goes on around them. How are you different than that?
It's the way I grew up, Greg. When one of our Allen citizens wrote a little book about the history of Allen, she asked me for a couple of lines to put on the cover. And I told her that Allen in the 50s and 60s was a place where every kid had a dozen mothers and all the dogs were known by name.
Right.
And it was like the whole village was your backyard. And if you went down the street to play, you knew that the mother of the children you were visiting were going to be watching over you just like your own. So you didn't feel a part of anything. You didn't feel separated. And I see folks now walking their dogs on a tight leash, and we never had our dogs on a leash. I understand the reason for it now.
Right.
But it was it was just a terrific place to grow up. But what organized it for me was in 1961 when President Kennedy was sworn in as our president. My dad and mom were there, and we spent the night with my aunt next door. And I remember watching his inaugural address on TV, and even at the age of 8, when he spoke about ask not what your country can do for you and so forth, that sort of said, well, yeah, I can enjoy this community, but maybe I can also go out and work to have other communities grow up the way I did and to have a sense of home about your community. There's so many people, even in Allen now, who use it as a place to sleep.
Right.
They don't get involved in the Lions Club or the fire company, and the store is closed, so it's not a gathering place there. It's a bedroom for someplace else. And so I regret that we've lost that. But the whole sense of community is what formed the person I feel like I am. And so I feel very, very lucky to be where I am and to come from where I did.
Yeah, if you want to feel community, go to that Allen Church.
Oh, yeah.
Where the food thing, whatever it's called. It's
the
just,
bazaar.
The bazaar. It's just the most amazing local event.
Well, we've got one coming up in a couple of weeks.
Is
so
it really?
I'll have to look for that.
Yeah, what's the date? Do you remember the date?
I don't
I have
remember.
to get
It'll
that in
be
the
like
paper.
the third or fourth Saturday in March, I'm sure.
But they pack them in, and the food is good.
It's great. Great
Yeah.
food. Well, you can see. They're a good customer, too.
Now, your dad was a judge, but wasn't your uncle the sheriff?
His dad, my grandfather,
Jesse.
served 3 terms as
Okay.
sheriff in Wicomico County.
Yeah.
In fact, he was the sheriff before Sam Graham
Okay.
and lived in the apartment right off of the jail.
Right.
And I would go up to visit. And I've got 2 quick funny stories about that. When my dad was in law school, his mom and dad lived there at the jail in the apartment that the county provided. Well, when he would fill out forms while he was in law school that required your name and address, he would always write down Dick Pollitt, County Jail, Salisbury, Maryland, which really raised a lot of eyebrows. And the thing I remember of myself was I was 6 years old when my grandfather left office. So up until the age of 6, I would go there and play. And they'd let me run back into the area where the cells were, and I would climb on the jail bars and talk to the prisoners, and it's kind of like a little Opie type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'd always ask them, does your mother know you're in here? Because, at 5 years old, the worst thing in the world could be that your mom finds
I'm
out
gonna
you've gotten
tell.
arrested.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
That's amazing. I want to get up there because I haven't been up in there in years and years and years. I want to see what it's like now.
It's tragic. It's a wreck. It's an absolute wreck. And one of the things I wanted to do was to really get an investment back in the old courthouse, including the top floor.
Right.
And I know Sheriff Lewis would like to have a shrine there for Sheriff Graham for
Right.
where he was murdered, and just to restore the whole top floor again. I hope they're able to do that.
Yeah, it always made sense to me that the state's attorney's office, when they expanded that would be a place for it, and people were like, no, that would never.
It's not.
It's just too much to
It's
do.
not accessible. You know,
Yeah.
the elevator is not equipped to handle the disabled, and it's not a good spot for that.
Yeah. You're an emotional guy. You can get kind of not emotional angry. You get sentimental and stuff. What do you miss the most about being the county executive?
I miss. Excuse me.
See, he's going to do it.
No, I'm not teary-eyed. I miss most of the people that I work with,
Yeah.
because they really were there for all the right reasons. They wanted to do a good job, and they all worked hard to help me accomplish the things that I wanted to do. I miss not being able to fulfill some of the good things we started. One of the things I'm most proud of was our visioning committee that we put together, including leaders from all of the major players in the community, and we would
It's
meet
an
around
amazing
the table.
document. I should do something to promote that, because people should read that document. It's
Well-
still very pertinent.
Well, I hope so. And we wanted to have a report that didn't just go on a shelf and be
Right.
referred to in the past tense right away. We actually adopted short, medium, and long-term action plans.
Yeah.
Well, one of our big initial successes was an instance where we were all around the table at the Civic Center talking, and Sandy Fitzgerald-Angelo from Pohanka was complaining about all of the people she would like to hire. People come to her for a job, but they didn't have access to transportation because they didn't have their driver's licenses, and they couldn't afford to go through a commercial driving school.
Right.
And so Ray Hoy was there as president of Warwick Community College. And he said, well, you know what, maybe Warwick could develop a driver education program
Sure.
for the folks that, you know,
Who
need
can't afford
that additional
Yeah.
boost. And Sandy spoke up and said, well, if you'll develop the program, I'll donate 2 cars to you. And so they got together, they went to Annapolis, got the MVA to approve it, and now they've got driver's education at Warwick Community College. That's a direct result of our visioning committee.
Yeah.
and
It's
what
such a
we tried to
simple
do.
thing, and it was an easy solution,
It's
and it
just
works.
getting people to the table and seeing how you can make things happen. And so I regret not being able to take that further along.
What's the next big thing to happen in Chrisfield?
Well, our wind turbine we're anxious. That should have been up a year and a half ago. So we're down near the final stages of that. We're very anxious to see that come up. Again, we're still trying to market Carville Hall. If we can get someone in there, we think that'll be a decided turn
Right.
for the better. And we've got spring coming up, so we've got all kinds of activity. It's a busy town.
It really is.
Yeah.
Rick, thanks for coming in today.
Greg, thank you.
It's
It's been a real
awesome to
treat
have you
seeing
back.
you again. and
Thank you.
Being back in town. Thank you.
He's Rick Pollitt. He's the city manager in Chrisfield, but we all know him for his great service for many years in Fruitland and Wycomico County. I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent, another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.